Welcome back to Grow and Make Stuff. First off, just want to thank all of you who have subscribed. 850 odd people so far, which I'm over the moon with, so big thanks to you guys. Just a quick upload to go over a few things that I've changed, upgraded, more improvements, and more try and error stuff as always. So far I've changed the transmission a couple of times, a different seat, I think 2 different seats, and the front suspension I've modified several times, plus a brand new piece that I've done, a kind of tilting mechanism. So we'll go through all that, starting with the transmission. So originally the chain was completely routed through plastic pipes from the rear sprocket up to the crankset, which worked okay, a little bit noisy and a bit scratchy, and the pipes that I used were just cheap plumbing pipe, 15mm plumbing pipe, which worked okay but was starting to wear out because of the angle of the chain, was starting to wear out. So I decided some idlers would be in order. So I, again as always, made some idlers from a couple of front chain rings and some bearings from eBay, which worked okay. I had to route them over 2 idlers to avoid the rear brake assembly that I made, which again worked okay, but was a little bit clunky and a bit, I don't know, wasn't very happy with it. So I decided to bite the bullet and move the entire rear brake to below the chainstay from above the chainstay to give more clearance for the chain. So I've now gone down to 1 idler, which originally was a toothed idler, which again I made. I've now changed that out for a nylon idler. I tried a plastic one, but that was just too weak and cheap, so I bought a nylon idler, which at the moment seems to work okay. It's slightly wider than the plastic one, so the chain's got room to move side to side when you change gear. Not been tested extensively yet, but seems to work okay. From there, we're on to the seat, which went from a couple of old plastic school chairs, which were just way too flexible, onto a homemade paracord and black webbing deck chair kind of affair, but it obviously looks like a deck chair on a trike. Comfortable, but just looks a bit rough. So that is now gone, and I've now moved on to a plywood seat assembly, slightly narrower, made from 2 skateboard decks, which I've added some foam to, which is actually seems quite comfortable. And also you can remove it as being made out of plywood. I don't want to leave it outside at all and the plywood get ruined and destroyed, so the whole seat can now be taken off and put indoors and put away again. Onto the front suspension. So originally it was rigid, which worked fine, but was just obviously too rigid. So I went from there to a pair of skis, which worked really well, just enough to damp the vibration, but being made mainly from wood, laminated with fiberglass, they absorbed a bit of moisture, which made the skis expand and contract with humidity, which in turn adjusted the track and the steering geometry only by a few mil, but it made a difference. So they've been binned, and I'm now onto a pair of crossbow limbs, fiberglass crossbow limbs. Again, all experimental. It might work, it might not. So the crossbow limbs are laminated with some flat bar to give it a bit of strength, which again seems to work quite well. It's not been extensively tested on long range trips, but it's done a few miles and seems to be holding up quite nicely. So I think I might refine that some more, but I think I'm going to stick with that idea. The biggest change I've made is the tilting mechanism. So after some riding and a few comments on some of my videos, quite correctly pointing out, when you ride the trike, because of the caster of the steering, which effectively tilts the axis back, when you steer left, the trike leans right, only a fraction, but effectively leans out of the corner, which places too much lateral load on the rear wheel, which is not designed for. So I'm having a crack at making the trike tilt. Now I thought about making all three wheels, so the front wheels and the rear would all tilt the same direction, but the engineering behind that is just beyond my comprehension. Or maybe not my comprehension, but my abilities, shall we say. So I've added a pivot point on the front cross member, which allows the entire trike, except the front cross member, to tilt side to side. I've stuck a brake disc and a caliper and a BMX locking brake lever in there, so you can lock the trike upright while stationary, which kind of works but kind of doesn't. So I naively thought you could lock the brake disc, cycle away, and once you get up to speed, release the brake and you would just sail off into the sunset. However, every time I release the brake, it just wants to fall over. So I then decided to add some kind of damping, which at the moment is two springs from mountain bike rear suspension, which work but are a bit clunky. So I'm going to change that out in place of some kind of rubber damping, or maybe some kind of mechanical lean. So when you steer, the trike leans. The problem with that is if you're at low speed, the trike will tilt too much, and if you're at high speed, it probably won't tilt enough. So trying to work out a kind of speed reactive mechanical tilting mechanism, I definitely think is way beyond my abilities. The other option I've got is a complete redesign and graft on the rear end of a pedal trike and to make it a quattro velo, which it might happen, but again, that means a lot of changes. It means swapping out the front wheels again for a pair of front wheels with brakes, hub brakes, because there's no front braking, but who knows. So once again, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing if you have. If you haven't, please do so if you feel that way inclined, and see you next time. Cheers.